Hey guys, this is going to be a meta update based on the Arlington Major. Things you guys can kind of look out for the end of this patch and what we can also be looking forward to for the next patch. For heroes that were not picked very much at the Major, but saw some high win rates that maybe we'll see some slight buffs since they weren't picked very much.
Banana Slam Jam.
So first and foremost, there's heroes that always define every meta. And in pro play, what people realize is there's about 10 or so heroes that are good enough to be picked super early on in the draft such that they will not lose you the game. And these are heroes that are just strong enough in regards to numbers that will have a reliably decent impact even if they're first picked and countered. So the heroes for this meta that were the most picked and definitely defined the entire thing were Tiny and Puck in the mid lane, Viper and Razor in the off lane, Marcy, Wyvern, Dazzle, and Chen in the support roles, and then Juggernaut, Bristleback, and Alchemist for the carry role. So the role that was first picked most often was off lane, and that's because right now, if you can pick a core that reliably does well in the laning phase, that's the goal. So out of all the roles, actually carry had the least spammed heroes. The hero pool for carries was by far the largest. But when you look at offlaners, Razor was picked or banned almost every single game, picked 57 times. Viper was banned almost every single game and was picked 31 times. And then on a close third was Death Prophet, who was picked 39 times, and she was largely only picked because these other two heroes were banned. In this current meta, that is the most defining role, because what happens is whatever people first pick, the response becomes everything according to what these heroes represent. So pretty much these toxic offlaners turn into a meta where the carry was hyper-focused on recovery and being able to be on their own and being survivable, and that's why heroes like Jug, Bristle, and Alk were considered pretty strong. Now, the issue here is a lot of heroes tend to get exposed. A lot of these heroes that we saw in the Major had varying results, and towards the end of it, become more or less popular. So I actually want to talk about the success and failure of most of the heroes that happened in this tournament. So it seems like the most reliable heroes, let's start with that, for this Major were Tiny, Viper, and Razor, and Puck, because these heroes were pretty much picked first round every single game. So Tiny offers you a flex between 4 and 2 with basically a 50% win rate with by far the most picks of 97 matches. And then Puck with the second most picks at 79 is just the hardest to counter because all of her counters felt pretty unreliable. The Hex heroes, Shaman and Lion, not so great. And also, it just feels like Puck scales way too hard with Sange and Kaya, Witchblade, Linken's, Octarine, all these crazy items that allow her to dish insane damage as the game goes on. But also, heroes that were first picked were the healing supports. And I think this is largely due to the salve nerf in lane and the ability to delay your BKB usage in fights. Because if you have safe supports, it lets you hold on to your BKB longer. And with the BKB nerf, these heroes became way more prevalent. Chen, by far, had the highest win rate. He had 48 games with almost a 70% win rate. He had a 69% win rate across 48 games. So if you feel like playing some Chen, just know what makes him so good is that he has pretty much a creep for every single lane. He has the Purge creep for certain lanes, the Mana Burn creep, the Harpy. He can, if he doesn't have a good creep, he can just use a range creep to go stack Ancients. I saw that a lot during the tournament. And the fact that this meta was a lot about stacking carries, heroes that take big stacks early, Chen was even better. So if you want to make sure you use these heroes, that's how you do it. Wyvern and Dazzle seem like great first pick supports right now. Same with Marcy. All these heroes saw a ton of play with basically a 50% win rate. Dazzle had 66 games with a 50% win rate. Wyvern had 62 games with a 48% win rate. And Marcy had 57 games with a 51% win rate. And I want to note that pretty much all these heroes were first picked. So seeing that they had these 50% win rates, even when countered, means that if you pick them in pubs and people don't counter you, you'll likely be able to have high impact. So healing supports, and then the damage supports, we saw that Marcy paired really well with these offlane ranged heroes, and then the damage support of choice for the tournament is actually, once again, seems like every single tournament, is Snapfire. She had a 46 games that she was picked with a 54% win rate. So if you're looking to be more of a team fight impact damage supporter, Snapfire seems like the way to go right now. These heroes guide the meta, right? So we needed to have carries that survived the laning phase and more reliably came online. And we also needed heroes to jump these backline supports. And we also needed some alternatives to these offlaners, right? So I want to point out what people kind of attempted to do and whether or not it worked. So I want to first and foremost talk about heroes that were meant to jump the backlines and kill these healing supports. Originally at the start of the tournament, people started with Void Spirit, and he has 25 games with a 32% win rate. So people kind of realized that he was not the ideal way to go. He felt like a hybrid of the all-in jump the backlines and more of a reliable mid, and it just didn't work. He was basically just losing to Puck and Tiny every single game. But on the other side of this, Storm Spirit was picked 22 times with a 72% win rate, a hero that we felt like was lost. But what happens is, when a hero's good against what's good, they become good. So if you guys are a mid laner and you see a bunch of these heal supports in the back like Dazzle and such, Storm Spirit seems like the hero to go to for this patch, and may even see buffs next patch since he was picked so little prior to the major as well as during the major itself. Heroes that were perceived to be good prior to the tournament that were figured out is really important to note. I would say Zeus had 39 games with a 44% win rate. Why do I think he has such a low win rate? I believe it's because of all these heals. I think specifically Dazzle type heroes and Chen made him much less likely to work. So if we're not dealing with heal supports and pubs, I think Zeus is still super freaking broken. Also the prevalence of Jug with the healing ward. Really the only counter to Zeus is being able to sustain his damage over the course of long fights. So if you guys see these heroes, be wary of picking Zeus. But if not, I think he's still the menace that you expect him to be in all of your pubs. In terms of alternatives to these toxic offlaners, these ranged offlaners, a lot of teams were still electing to go for Summons Heroes. We talked at the beginning of this patch that Summons Heroes had some of the highest win rates in pubs. And that seems to be the case in these pro matches. But these Summons Heroes were picked much later on in the draft. And that's important to note that if you're an offlaner, I wouldn't recommend first rounding a Summons Hero. But if you see a lineup that has very little AoE damage to deal with your summons, these heroes are still incredibly powerful. We already talked about Chen as a support, but Enigma had 20 games, Lycan had 14 games, and Lone Druid as a carry had 11 games. Visage also had 17 games, and Beastmaster had 19 games. All these heroes had at least a 60% win rate, and amongst all of them averaged almost a 70% win rate. So if you're looking to find alternatives in the second round of drafting in your pubs, third, fourth picks, the Summons Heroes are definitely your go-to heroes, even if you feel dirty winning with them. In regards to the carry role, Jug was by far the most picked at 35 games with a 51% win rate. Seems like old reliable is Juggernaut right now, so I'd say when in doubt, go for Jug. Some failures were Monkey King with 27 games and less than a 40% win rate, and also Alchemist seemed to fall off at 22 games and 36% win rate. I feel like the offlane was just so high pressure right now, and even though Alk is a nice farming carry that can recover with Acid Spray, he doesn't want to deal with Summons Heroes that are always pushing his buildings. He doesn't want to be ran at constantly by these offlane ranged heroes that are like bullying him out of lane. So I think if you see melee stunning offlaners, Alk is the dream, but that's not very popular at the highest level right now. And you got to be careful of just picking him when you don't see these heroes yet. But Bristleback, my boy, one of my favorite heroes going into the major. He saw many bans, and he was still picked 23 times with a 61% win rate. So definitely spam the QW boy while you still can. I think he is ultra busted. Lastly, I'd like to wrap up this video with heroes that were niche that had very high win rates. So first and foremost, Necrophos was pretty much exclusively picked 9th, 10th in all the games he was seen. 7 games, 100% win rate. So as opposed to Venomancer, who's a similar offlane mid-type hero with damage over time, saw 12 picks with a 3-9 record. So Necrophos seems like a much later version in the draft that can either go mid or offlane and dealt really well with all these tanky strength heroes, and also synergized very well with all these heal supports on his own team. Another hero is Wraith King, who in 7 games had a record of 6-1. A lot of teams were going for these burst damage combos with heroes like Faceless Void and the Snapfire you saw a lot of, as well as the Puck and just creating a hero that was difficult to gank. I think his only bad matchups right now are actually the summons heroes. Wraith King suffers immensely against these heroes because they usually offer a lot of continuous damage output. But Wraith King, surprisingly very high win rate. Next up, you guys are going to hate me for this. Jenkins is going to love me for this, is that Pudge had 12 picks and was predominantly picked against summons offlaners and puck mid, okay? So if you're looking to go mid Pudge, look out for those pucks in your games. If you see these summons offlaners, look for Pudge as a carry. He was picked 12 times with a record of 10-2. I officially agree that you cannot first pick Pudge and reliably have a good game, but the Major itself proved with late pick Pudges in the right scenarios, this hero is insanely powerful. So shout out to Jenkins for the one patch. He is actually relevant. So I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of this meta update. The heroes that we saw the least of with high win rates, really keep an eye out for them in the next patch. I think Pudge is going to get nerfed with the likes of Necro, Wraith King, Storm Spirit. These are the heroes I'm really looking out for. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys later.